All right, there were no questions posted, so I've got some like cleanup material or some prep material to go over, and hopefully you'll find this is useful. All right, I've mapped out. Excuse me. I've mapped out the lessons going forward. The folks from the resident course in May in IITM are now. I prepared for them to come on board and start asking questions about the different lesson chunks. So this was to be lesson 1 today, and so we will roll this forward. Just I would note there's no scheduled session for the Sunday of July 1st because Anthony, Van and Kala's niece, is getting married, and I'm going to go to Florida for that one. And so I think we're traveling that Sunday. I may do a separate session in there if we get some questions and whatnot, but I'm planning right now on not being able to do that one on that Sunday. But otherwise, those are the days of the sessions going forward. If you didn't get a chance to listen to it yet, this podcast interview with 52traders.com I thought was pretty good. He's got a really nice and structured set of questions. In fact, what I'm going to do is send those questions around to you because I think if you do an interview of yourself, that's probably a pretty good idea. It was a nice way to help me go back and revisit some decisions and narratives and explain what I try to do and what we're trying to do to folks who hadn't heard a thing. You know, normally if I see you guys at like at a THARP workshop, then we've already got sort of a common ground and a common language. And so I found it helpful to summarize what we do for somebody who has absolutely no idea what we do. And I tried to answer the questions in that sense. And it was actually a really good idea to kind of go back and start from ground zero. Now, as a consequence of that, Cam Hawkins, who runs that site, has a place on his web page where he sells mini courses with the folks who he interviews. They're usually like an hour long with some supporting material, and he sells them for $200, and he splits that with the person who's presenting the material, sort of as a way to aware people at his site about the kind of services the person offers. Now, when I looked at a couple of those courses, the home study courses that I do tend to be like 40 and 50 hours. I mean, it's a long-term slog. But it occurred to me that there would be some real utility in trying to crunch things down into hour-long chunks. Now, I mean, I sort of do that anyway with lessons, but I was thinking of a much more structured approach. And so I will probably do that with the Max Payne Range Compression course and make a mini course with him to raise awareness of what we're doing, but also to kind of focus on building out a 1-hour course. Well, as I started thinking about it, it occurs to me that the rule sets of the particular systems really can be taught in 1 hour, but there's a lot of supporting trader practice, I would call, or rules of the dojo, some environmental conditions and techniques that go in to provide a frame of reference or sense making around the particular system itself. And so I was trying to think about which ones I ought to include in that strategy course, and what it really came down to was something like these 20 items that you see here. These are all things that I think I want everybody to know. I mean, I almost said I think you have to know to be able to optimize this tortoise style of trading that we're collaboratively building. And so this as I look at these things, if each one of these was 15 to 30 minutes, I mean, there's 10 hours right there, and I was trying to figure out how I cram that into a 1 hour course for him, and I really don't think I can. And so all of these little chunks of knowledge are found in the advanced swing course and in the advanced day trading course, but I don't know that I've actually listed them in this particular way. In one way, to look at it, this is almost like if you were going to do a black belt test in tortoise trading. I might list these 20 things here as your basic kata, your basic forms, and as I look at them, none of these are trading systems or strategies. Not a single one of them. So there's something to be said, I think, for this sort of environmental conditions. These are all kind of in the prepare. If you look down at number 13, for example, I wrote something earlier this year about plan, prepare, execute, and assess that I really, really liked. I think it articulated my beliefs about those 4 elements as part of a continuous improvement, continuous operation. So each one of these is probably anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes worth of material. So I think I'm going to organize it in that way. I would take that list right there, and I would check your own knowledge. I would check yourself and see if you're clear about what I mean about those things, or if you could put that into your own words. And I would almost, I guess, I'm thinking now like a college professor, if I were going to check on learning, what I would do is have you pass your oral comps by asking you to define these for yourself in about a 5-minute elevator speech, or even maybe a 3-minute elevator speech, and see if you could articulate the basics. I was reading something this weekend, and it was about validating lessons learned, or confirmation of learning. And the guy was talking about what do we mean when we say that this material has been learned. And he was talking about it in terms of, let's see, was it a pilot? Yeah, it was a pilot who was flying a twin-engine Cessna, and is at 10,000 feet in a fog bank, and he gets some warning lights on his aircraft. And he goes through a series of, and I'm the pilot, so I can't really recreate all that stuff, but he goes through a series of mental checklists and processes and coming up with strategies, considering risk and reward about what to do and how to safely fly the plane. And it turned out he did something like, shut off the fuel to the right side engine, which was on fire, so it wouldn't burn, and then adjusted the other engine and some of his flaps and whatnot, so he could fly safely on one engine, and then made a particular approach to the closest airport that accounted for the winds, the direction of the winds, the illumination, and then the fact that he had just that one engine on the left-hand side. And so the guy says it. Now, this is what we mean by knowledge, in that you have on board, in memory, readily accessible, the knowledge, skills, and attributes to be able to apply your knowledge to a particular situation to solve a problem and get a satisfactory result. And so that's as opposed to knowing it in your head and knowing where to go to get real answers and all that. The guy flying the plane was not in a position to conduct a lot of research or ask somebody or anything. Familiarity was not enough. It had to be knowledge that was on board that could be implemented and acted on with confidence in a critical situation. So I was thinking about that as I was putting together this list of 20 things. And so I just want to give you an overview for that. What I'm going to suggest is that I think it would be worth your while if you're in the coaching program or want to join the coaching program or just as part of this course here, that you prepare your 3-minute speeches on each one of these and submit it for review. I think you would benefit tremendously from that. So the first thing I would see, the personal learning journal, because I absolutely believe that is the most important book on trading that you can learn or that you can read, because that's the one that you write. It incorporates the trading journal, but also involves things besides trading. It's your own personal growth and self-development. I think one chapter of that is your trading log and the particular trading lessons of systems. But this also has to do with goals and objectives, and personal development and psychology and things of that nature. The next one is target identification. How do you decide that this, of all the things that you could trade, that this is a target that meets your criteria, that it's the kind of thing that you can trade that you're looking for? What are you hunting? What is the kind of thing that you want to see? What are its characteristics? Where do you find it? What kind of moves does it make? How do I distinguish it from other things? What are those key indicators? Right? The logic chain by which you connect your plan, your preparation, and your execution, so that you link together the market, the sector, and the target. Yeah, I think I would agree with you, Martin. This was my first. I was going to make a top 10, and so I stopped at 20, and then I remembered I had to add the personal learning journal, so I made that 0. I think one brick at a time is probably, in the 0 state. So as we're going through this, guys, as you're listening to the sound of my voice, if there's other things that you think ought to be on the black belt test, certainly that's already 2. 0 state and the owl meditation and one brick at a time. And so there's 3 that already have to be on there. So keep notes. So the logic chain is how you go from price action in the market through the sector to the target and decide which one of those 3 is your actual trading. I would add a 4th one, volatility. So it's that whole radar screen and logic chain that allows you to quickly find the mover. Right? That's really the relationships and correlations between different elements of the market. Daily preparation, that is from the moment the market closes to the moment that it opens. That's your prep time. What do you do? What is your process to go from the close of one day to the start of the next day? What are those steps? And apply value chain analysis to it. Daily time management. How do you organize that trading day to account for the time of day or the time of week or the time of the month, time of the quarter or year, in order to focus on one strategy or another? Where's the time that you allocate for preparation and for assessment and for relaxation and for professional development as well as trading? Creating the daily logic chain. Oh, that's one I can double up. 2 and 5 are the same one. Creating the daily logic chain is more than just the idea of the logic chain. It's a process you might go through reading the daily or the weekend report that creates the particular chain you have for tomorrow. So number 2 logic chain is, I think, the big connection between symbols and the sectors and the market. The particulars of that, creating your daily logic chain, is really how you read the reports to come up with scenarios, so scenario planning. Standard trade framing, or the trading process, that's that one-page list of about a dozen questions that causes you to go through your process of framing the trade in both directions and rehearsing all the decisions that you know you're going to have to make. Oh, I just thought of another one. The 2R battle drill's not even on there. 1 brick at a time. 2R battle drill. Oh yeah, 0 state. Gratitude and forgiveness. Owl meditation. Meditation. No wonder this course is so long. There's all these things that I think you have to do before you trade. So standard trade framing is how we structure that, so we make sure that we get it in both directions. Look at reward and risk. Look at decision points. Look when we add positions and so forth. This idea of position sizing risk versus execution stop risk, I think that's one of the big ideas here of the last several months, maybe this whole year. The clarity on that one. Trading is a skill-based activity. Thanks to Alex for articulating it in exactly that way. That this is craft knowledge and what the experience of trying to learn this is like, and why we should account for that as part of the trading. My little presentation on knowing your edge and knowing how to organize your trading activity to take advantage of your strengths, to protect against your weaknesses, and to know when you are coming into your edge or getting near the boundary of that edge so you can react accordingly. The tortoise histogram, so I'm going to pair that with number 11. Know your histogram says that for every system and for all your systems, you should have a very clear understanding of what your histogram should be when it's working properly, and how to check it, and then what the boundary conditions are. When do I know that something is out of whack for all of your trading? And then I would go back to number 10, the tortoise histogram. If you take a look at the way I trade intraday and the swing trades, it is geared to produce a very specific kind of tortoise, a type of results histogram that meet my objectives and my goals and many of ours. And you should know what that is too, and make sure that that aligns with who you are and what you can do and what you're trying to achieve, because the guidance that I give you is all geared towards this objective, this future state in which the results of the trades are conforming to the characteristics of that histogram. You know, the first thing, no losses greater than 1R. A normalish looking curve between -1R and +2R. And then open to the possibility of a fat right tail but no fat left tail. That's the 3 elements of a tortoise histogram, with lots of repetitions and lots of data, and finding out quickly where you are in that curve. So if that's not the kind of curve you're trying to achieve, then there's some cognitive challenges that you're going to have, trying to apply my systems or listen to my advice. So that's why I say, know the tortoise histogram, know your histogram. The elements of basic descriptive statistics, because we use those in a particular way as one of our edges, and because that affects so many of the indicators and my habits of mind when looking at the market and price action volatility, that's essential. The plan, prepare, execute, assess cycle of continuous improvement. And the reasons that I have prepare and assess in all caps, because in my view, those are the two essential elements that make us a continuous learning process. And then paired with that, the sustain, improve, and action. And that's really a subset of the assessment, that when you've assessed your plan, prepare, and execute, and when you've assessed your assessment in that sense, you want to find the things to sustain, the things to improve, and then your action plan to start eating away at that list with accountability. Those two taken together, 13 and 14, are really crucial. Now, the next set, the next 5, I would guess, these are the sense-making, technical components of our process. The regression line, crossover, Bollinger Band framework. Oh, I got to add the. I think I got to add the RLF framework to that too. The frog box as the unit of noise for intraday and as the position sizing risk. The MACD histogram 10, 30, and 5 as a simplified way to look at the price action in terms of having a directional bias. I think that helps us clarify, because it actually is turning off the price and smoothing out the curve somewhat. The idea of pinch and stretch and the super pinch, because these really encapsulate all the possible positions in the life cycle of price and volatility as it goes through time. Things are either, if they're not normal, then they are either pinched or stretched, and then our strategy for doing that, for acting in those areas, are different. And then the super pinch, in which you have a combination of very low volatility, sideways price action, which has produced consensus about fair value by all the different time frames, creates a very important moment for the next leg to begin. Finally, these little characters, these little animal caricatures that represent certain dimensions of our psychology: monkey, the owl, the dragon and baby dragon, a mule, a rhino, a scorpion, tortoise. I haven't really talked that much about a scorpion, but I've been thinking a lot about him lately. Scorpion is really just talks about the power of your identity and your own nature. Why does the scorpion sting? Well, because he's a scorpion. Yeah. Yeah. So I would, if I took that set of 21 and then added these over here from the One Brick at a Time, talks about the R machine, the importance of the 2R battle drill in framing the most normal or expected rehearsed decision that you can make. It should not be a place where you're spending a lot of time trying to figure out what to do. It's the place where you have rehearsed that decision so many times that it's automatic. The idea of zero state being the proper mental state to trade, and I would add this time, will, pattern, money as the 4 criteria for being able to make a trade, that you've got time left in the day or the week or whatever, that you are in the proper emotional state, cognitive state, the zero state, that you have a particular pattern that meets all the criteria, and that you have risk capital available. You need all 4 of those things for a trade to occur, and it's normally the will that is the first thing that fails, because you can't get into the right mindset. The notion of gratitude and forgiveness as a way to help us deal with our human emotions and to stay centered on the larger picture. The owl meditation as a technique for processing all of that negative emotion that inevitably develops from trading. Then I would add the RLFF as a concept as part of that sense-making process. That would so I think those got to get added, and that gives us about 25. And I think those are the elements of the. I don't know if that's the black belt test. That's probably the purple belt. Purple belt means that you're ready to roll and that you have some skills. I think the black belt or a brown belt is you have to have had one of those. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with those, Hugh. I would say, yeah, the integrated time frames. Yeah, maybe these are all the things that you need for black belt. Integrated time frames. 1, 2, 3, UE. I wouldn't disagree with those. Yeah, that's so. I mean, we're sort of settling in on 30, and I think that so a 3-minute speech on every one of those about would convince me that you had mastered the all of those other materials. I think that's probably brown belt or something like that. And I'm thinking at black belt level is where you've then also mastered at least one of the the trading strategies or systems where you're actually applying these techniques to the particular. So these I think are the groundwork for all of the that body of knowledge that supports the particular trades. That's like, what I found and the reason I'm thinking about these is as I was talking with Cam and thinking about his his clients at the website and whatever. It occurred to me that his listeners and a number of them have contacted me. Like one guy, I thought it was kind of quite a remarkable much. He sent me a note that says, and he didn't even say, "Hey, good afternoon, Mr. Long," or "Good afternoon, Ken," or whatever, or "Hey, I listened to you here." He just his one-line note to me on an email was, "Can you send me everything you have about the max pain range compression?" ? And that was it. And he signed his name. It wasn't thanks or appreciate it, thanks in advance, or here's where I found it. It was just like, hey, would you send me everything you know? And I was really struck by that. I couldn't imagine myself writing that email. But as I thought about it, I said, all what he knows is what he knows, and he may have been brought up differently than me. And so I genuinely want people to know these things. So it occurred to me that if I did send him everything about the MPRC, but I didn't send him these things 0 through 20 and these other things that we've been adding, that I was almost setting him up for failure. Yeah, I like that one too, Glenn. Yep. Slope stat, alpha stat, some of those things. Alpha stat. The idea of the MDX. Oh man, you're killing me. Yeah, that's right. Risk Z. Yeah, so these are all things that are parts of the mosaic. Robert Gardner would have called these parts of the mosaic, and which create a frame of reference around the particular trading strategy or the decision making. Yeah, so that's sort of that. What I'm going to do is probably record my own 3-minute speech on each one of these things, sort of as a template for for self-grading. What I would suggest you do is copy those rascals down and and start working on your notes for your own statement of, I don't know, certification or whatever. Maybe that's the right word. Yeah, I like ruthless risk management. That's clearly part of the deal. The confidence in exit, I think, is part of the. Oh, I know how to. It's the idea of strike. That when it's time to act, you strike. Stop talking, you just go. Because you've done your due diligence. Yeah. I just installed Grammarly because I was trying to help one of my students with her writing, and now Grammarly's trying to help me. How nice. All right, so that's it. That's everything. If there's other things that you guys think that ought to get on there, I would appreciate just a short note, and I'm going to build this out and talk about it as the sort of the graduation exercise. I'm going to go through all the videos and the topics and see if there's anything I missed in there. But that's sort of that. All right, so I would, if you haven't listened to that podcast yet, I would suggest it. I would start getting your notes together. Those, I think, are the crucial elements that we got to be able to talk about. And then there's a separate set, which is the particulars of the trading systems. There's certainly those. I'm trying to get the ones that are not directly related to a system note. Well, Glenn, what I was gonna further break this into something like psychology and maybe technical skill. I'm gonna look at the sequence on that too, and see if there's a logical grouping. But I think each one of these is kind of a standalone chunk as well. That if I talk about integrated time frames, the connection between position trading, swing trading, and day trading with the core and turbo. I guess that's what integrated time frames really needs to include core and turbo. That needs to be on there. Yeah. So that's that. I want to just shift gears a little bit here. There was a there was a moment in the chat room where I was talking with Sunil. Let's see, where is it here? Maybe it's this. Yeah, here it is. So I watched Sunil going through a process where she was mapping out her strategy for USO. It was like almost like a little campaign plan. And so what I asked her to do, I really liked the work she put together. And what I wanted her to do was add a little more rigor and process control to how she is going about making that plan. In other words, her own trading process, her own framing sequence. And so this was the guidance I gave to her in the moment. I want you to write down, and let me put this on here too, so I can talk to it as we're going. What I wanted her to do was to write down the steps in the process you followed to systematically frame the trade. List the things you looked at in what sequence. And so in column 1, I wanted her to put the indicator. What was the thing she looked at first? And then the purpose. Why did you look at it? Now, Number 3, what is information does it give you? Number 3, what's the scale of it? So it might be, as an example, on the MACD histogram, when the signal line crosses over the 0 line, you have either a long or a short bias. That's what you have. So the scale on that is long or short. If you're looking at the risk Z, you might have the 4 seasons of the risk Z, or the MACD histogram itself might be 4 seasons, and not just 2. And then what is the particular reading? So this is when I looked at it this time. Here's what it currently says. And so these first 3, 1, 2, and 3, really describe what the indicator is all about and how you read it. And then as you get into these next ones, what's the particular reading? What is my interpretation of it? What's the degree of confidence I have in it? What actions does it lead me to want to take? That's really, the second part gets into the sense making of all these individual indicators. So once you've got all those indicators, part 2 is the mixing of the ingredients. And in this space, you'd put something like, when I read the risk Z and the market classification and the sector strengths and all that stuff, here's what I now think the narrative of the market is. And if you think about it, this is how you create the components of that logic chain and the particular narrative for the day or for the week. And then the so what of it is the how do I put that sense into action? What are my decision points? What are my priorities? What are the things I'm going to look at? How am I going to implement the logic chain and so forth? So what I asked her to do was to put this in this text right here, was the idea of trying to create a standard process for her to go through to frame those trades, so she could make her steps explicit. Yeah, Duke, this is how you go from all of those separate indicators. Like if you go back and look at that list that we just put together, and you look at the daily report and all that, there's a ton of things to look at and to read. And I use a certain number of them to create my own decision-making strategy, but I think every one of us has to do that as well. This, to me, is part of the black belt test, is you got to be able to map your own trading and preparation process. Now, I have that form that I showed you of all the things that I do to go through the daily prep. So this is really, this is starting to build the flow chart for what you look at and how you look at it and in what sequence, and how you go from all the things that could be traded into a plan for things that you're prepared to trade. And then the second step is turning that into all the details for each target, where you flesh out the trade frame, where your real preparation. So this is a strategic planning process right here. And so she uploaded her first cut at that in the chat room, and I thought she did a nice job. I think each of us have to do that for ourselves. Like I have a certain ritual and a sequence that I use when I go through the weekend report, because that follows the way I think from top down, outside in, and leads me through a systematic weekly process, then a daily process, and then I end up with my usual suspects and a list of things that I'm prepared to trade. So I think the black belt test part of this is you getting your process mapped out. For those of you in the sound of my voice that are coming to Kansas City, this to me is the single most important thing that you can do for a presentation if you're thinking about doing that. What I would do is work on this so that you could brief that, and then you could practice doing that during the live trading. I think this is absolutely high priority. Like if you're in the sound of my voice and are thinking of coming to Kansas City, what I think you should do is take that list of 30 things and do a knowledge check, a self-test on that, and then take one system, develop it out, and then build out this decision-making strategy. I think that would be a tremendous use of your time and then that resource of the workshop in Kansas City to get that refined. That's what I would do. Still got some slots in that workshop. So that's what I wanted to say about Sonal's work. She uploaded her work in the chat room. I thought she did a really nice job of that. I'm going to flesh this out a little further. When we look, I'm going to look at the weekend report here in a minute, and it will show you a similar a couple ways that I actually started making my own process a little more transparent and documented. I have actually found that of all the things that have helped me improve my technique and improve my planning and my results, it's this kind of work where you unpack your processes, the things that you have to notice yourself doing the work in your usual way and recording those steps and then studying the steps with something like value chain analysis. Why am I looking at this? What is it that I specifically need to know? That kind of stuff. So I really think this is exactly the kind of work that you need to be able to do to truly be a black belt of trading. When I say that, I mean that when you get your black belt in the martial arts, all that means is that you have now become a competent student of the art, that you can now be trusted to train yourself, that you know enough to be able how to self-regulate, that you can work on your own for extended periods of time, and then periodically come back and demonstrate that you're ready for the next higher degree of the black belt. But up until the black belt point, you're really working under the guidance of that sensei who's sort of directing your path through the katas and the forms and the attitudes that it takes to be self-directed. And so this ability here to be able to map out your own process is an essential step of getting to that, I would say, black belt status as a trader. That you can find things to trade, you can illustrate the logic, you can connect indicators and sensors, you can make sense of them, you can integrate them into a trading plan, and you can prepare yourself to trade the next day, all on the basis of having your recipe, your formula, your playbook that is optimized for you, that you know how to look at the tape, you know how to mark up a chart and to look for opportunities, and you know how to evaluate yourself and to read a histogram. All of those elements are part of that, how to be self-sufficient and how to posture yourself for continuous learning. So that's what I would say. Okay. There were a couple charts I wanted to look at that I thought were helpful. Some of the work you guys did in the. Yeah, here was one from Sonal's work. You know how I know she's successful and going to continue to be successful? Because she does the work of marking things up and studying it and reflecting and all that stuff. So here she has, let's see. This was the daily chart over here, and I think this one is, this was probably 15 minutes. And then this one here is 3 minutes. So this is 3. And I think this is 15 or 10. And then this is the daily chart. And so now unbeknownst to me, she already, at this moment here, she already had 2 positions on going long. And she wanted to add turbo in here. And that was the trade frame that she looked at, that she bought this pocket right here. You can see that this thing has moved up, has stabilized. You got a pinch, and then she bought the pocket in the elbow of the dragon, and she cashed it here. And then she was evaluating 1, 2, 3 exits here, or a collapsing dragon exit there, all of which is fine. And the point that I just wanted to make to reinforce with her was then on the daily chart, these primitive caveman drawings are mine. So I said, take a look at the daily chart and the fact that you have in this area support level all in here. And then this area equates to this area here. This is a very strong support level. That also equates down to here to this little space in here. Okay. And I said, that's why to me, this emerging dragon was the essential entry to make. That's the one we want to look for, because we've got the compression of the Bollinger Bands. We have fair value is rolling up. The river is up. We had a consolidation area. It failed to. This is where, from here, it should have failed back into the channel or down to the bottom of the channel. It didn't. It broke out. And so this becomes the area where we want to be long. And then it comes back into this little consolidation area. And then she gets the next continuation pattern. So to me, that's the first leg. This is potentially the second leg. So I like the exit that doesn't stick around, because if this was going to work, it should do this, then have another pullback, and then possibly a third leg. So this would be the second leg. That would be the third leg. And the point I want to make on this one is this integrated time frame. Is that the importance of this support level here makes this especially important. That failure to fail from there is why this becomes a really good entry. Okay. I was doing some work with we got a bunch of people registering now for our youth soccer academy. I was getting ready to send a message out to my little coaches to be ready for next week. So it's starting to hit the bricks. And now we got like 15 or 20 kids already signed up, which is already twice as many as we had last year in terms of pre-registration. So I'm really feeling good about that. Girls are really going to do a nice job. Okay, so here's another one from Sonal. I love those two entries. Notice it's above the zero line, and she has this the MACD histogram comes back. It doesn't go all the way to zero, but crosses back up and above. So I really like those two entries. I don't mind this third entry so much, I guess. I mean, that's probably a money management one, but it's already well above the zero line, and it's outside this little red river right here. But what I love the most is, so I don't mind that. That's a good way to get a third position on with markets money. But I love the exit to lock all in the gains of those three. And then this is failure to fail, and then she buys the pocket. I love that. This, maybe this or here could get me out. But still, this is still a positive gain. And so there's nothing wrong with that. There's probably she was not available during this period of time, so you can see this was failure to fail further. And if you drop that line down into here, we're still above the zero line. Where if we dipped and now we cross back above, and then somewhere in this somewhere between here and here, this is the area where it failed to fail. It did not come down into this area. It stayed above the zero line. So that tells me this is the area for entry. And then if this was enough to get you out, it might be this is enough to get you back in, because now you have a continuation. You have this little pullback and continue to the upside, and then you get all of this, and then here's the warning after a nice move up to be ready to exit. Now, how good is that? Very good. That's how good that is. And then you have enters the river, exits the river, crosses the 0 line. So this is, by this time, you have plenty of early warning to adopt a negative posture. And I like to have that from here all the way down to that RLCO and reentry of the river. So during this whole period of time from here to here, you have a downside bias, and then look what you get. You get from here all the way down to here. And this is where you can start stalking to the upside. It enters the river, leaves the river, crosses the 0 line, and this is where you can officially pick up the long side bias, and there's still a trade there. You have this much of a gain available, and a couple places where you could buy dips. So the other thing that I just love about her work, and by the way, this big move here is this move here on the dailies. I love the way she prepares and the way she self-analyzes. I think it's just tremendous work on her part. That's how you make a living. This was an opportunity trade. I think, I want to say it was Friday? I think it was Friday. So there was a... EWZ has just been absolutely horrible. And here's where it closed the day before. Oh, yeah, so that's... this was the close on 5/31. So that was Thursday. And then this is 6/1. That's Friday morning. And there was a nice little gap up. There is a hybrid frog entry in here if you're a hybrid frogist. But even if you are, and if that gets you out, that's fine. You get an up, a down, and up, and then a fail. So right here is the collapsing dragon short. And then it does this. Here, and it fills right through here. And it gets all of this in about 3 minutes. And then rebounds back up into here. And then from here, it basically did that the rest of the day. And so this was one of those where good preparation on Brazil made me very lucky to get this. And when I covered down in here, I was pretty happy. So this was, the initial short was something like 36, 35. And then the cover was down here around 35.57. So that was like 80 cents on a 20-cent risk. So that's what 4R intraday turbo looks like. This one actually had some other, I think it had, yeah, this is where I covered it and ended up doing this crap. So there was actually more down there. I think it went as far down as 35.30 as well. So that was like two, so that's 4R on the first one. The second one gets short at 36 and then covers at 37 or 35.55. So that's like another 2R on this one. So that's something like 6R in that morning. So it doesn't take a fancy chart. Well, if you're very well prepared, it's amazing how lucky you can be. This was a natural place to cover because that's where they were willing to hold it overnight. I felt like I'm already 6R in hand. How much more did I want? And as you can see, Brazil can move pretty quickly, so I'm very happy to take a gift like that one. We already saw this one. Yeah, this is another nice one from Chanel. I asked her to do the following, she's been second guessing herself a lot with little things like an exit here or an exit in here, where she might have exited here. I asked her to do on these pinches to try like a 1-2-3 entry, a Z3P breakout, and then a third position with the hybrid frog. So that was entry 1, 2, and 3, and then simply to follow it with that size, and then strike when you had to see if that could get her out of maybe second guessing herself and getting chewed up inside here. And then what I asked her to do was to do three things for comparison. Was number one, see what the robot would get if she just followed those simple rules. Then the second thing was trade it in her way, the way the trader would do it, and then compare those two results, and then figure out the trader quality number, because what she was struggling with is the chimpanzee inside of her head saying, hurry up and grab it, don't let my bananas get away. And so we wanted to see, if you trade it according to the chimp, what is the value add of the chimp? And then the third thing was to notice what kind of feelings she gets watching the... so the third thing was, analyze for the TQN, and then analyze her feelings about, can you let go of your own feelings and let the rule set just be the rule set? So if the results are bad, it just means the rules were bad. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. So being able to disassociate your identity from the results, if you have to approach this like a little scientist and try to analyze the results and see what you may see, we've got to be able to put that wedge in there between how we feel and what we do. Yeah, so Duke, I'm in a place where I'm having issues holding through the pockets to preserve profits. Well, here's what I would always say. You know, if you had made these two entries, let's say that you had made this entry and your intention was to have this as the execution stop, right? And then as this thing started moving up, you were going to trail it. And then if you put a second position on, you cut that trailing stop in half, so that's all you ever risked. Now you got two positions on, and instead of taking two losses of that size, you would take two losses of that size. So you got to move that stop up to half, and now you're kind of trailing it with the... in this case, I don't see anything wrong with the dang the RL270. And you have to recognize that right there is just noise. That the signal is this. That move has some signal and some noise, if you will. The amount of signal that went up this far and only came back that far, you haven't violated that level yet. So one of the ways that you can get through there is take a look at your position size. I would tell you right now, cut your position size by 2/3. Trade with 1/3 of the size that you're trading, so that you're not being focused on the dollar value of the loss. That you have to learn how to take that heat, and if it means reducing the position size so you don't feel the heat as much, then that's what you got to do until you get a feel for being able to execute with size. Then when you can execute and you got positive expectancy, you can start using that system's earned money to increase your position. You might remember the difference between the pessimistic mind and the optimistic mind. That little speech I give on that one. And in fact, that's such an important one. I need to add that to the list as well. optimistic mind versus pessimistic mind. Yeah. So there's that one. I think that was all the ones I wanted to look at. Yeah. So pending any questions from you guys, I appreciate. This was a little maybe more unstructured today, but I think there were some foundational ideas expressed. So I hope that you found that to be worthwhile. I am going to send out a document capturing what we said, and try to where's it? Yeah, I'm going to try to capture. I will capture all of these plus the pessimistic mind, optimistic mind, and say these are the topics that you have to be able to master for the brown. I think that's the brown belt test. All right, and I think I'll take your advice. I'll try to put that into some basics, like maybe try to get a sequence of like 4 or 5, and then maybe we have like a little. We'll use that little martial arts belt certification so as little checkpoints along the way. So we'll see how that goes. Okay. All right. If there's no other questions, then guys, I'll go ahead and sign off here. I'll get this recorded, and then I will post that on this page here under the replay. I'll put the replay link in order to replay this one. And yeah, I saw that one for the numbered lists. Yep. Is Markdown, is that part of the base camp, or is that a separate? Where's that? Does that come out of the little notepad? Oh, part of base camp. Yeah, I think I've seen that one before. I just I'll take a look at that one. Thanks for the tip. All right, guys, that's everything I got. Hey, thanks for hanging in there, and that concludes our webinar for today.